Texas Governor Greg Abbott signed a controversial voting bill into law Tuesday. The Election Integrity Protection Act of 2021, also known as SB 1, bans drive-thru voting and changes early voting hours. There are also new requirements for mail-in voting and poll worker protections. The bill was passed after the Republican governor called two special sessions of the state legislature this summer. Democrats tried 2 times to thwart the measure, arguing it makes it harder for some people to cast a ballot. For more on this, I'm joined by Renuka Rayasam. She is the author of Politico Nightly. Hi there, Renuka. So which Texans are most likely to be impacted by this new law?
So this bill actually takes aim squarely at many of the provisions that Harris County put in place last year because of the pandemic. For example, you mentioned drive-through voting, 24-hour voting. A lot of these measures were used by low-income Texans in Harris County, by people of color in that county, and this bill eliminates them. And it includes a lot of provisions that would also take aim at voters of color. For example, periodic reviews of non-citizens on the voter rolls. And this could be, someone maybe they got a driver's license and became a citizen after. And so folks like that could get caught up in this bill. Some of the other provisions, like banning what they call souls to the polls drive or Sunday voting, those didn't make it in the final bill, but ultimately a lot of what this bill does is empower partisan poll watchers and kind of give the GOP perhaps a bit more leverage in elections going forward.
And Renuka, is anyone poised to legally challenge SB 1?
Right. So we have already 5 lawsuits on the books against this bill. It was just signed today. So there's 2 federal lawsuits, and you have groups, faith-based groups that are suing, saying that this bill would restrict access to their voters. The Texas League of Women Voters are saying this also restricts access, as well as Texans with disabilities. So those are just a couple of the federal lawsuits we're seeing. We're also seeing about 3 state lawsuits. So far, this bill has been challenged, and it just got signed today on multiple fronts. And, Greg Abbott today said he's confident that the bill will withstand legal challenges. But right now, at the moment, you're definitely seeing the start of a long legal process that's going to take a look at whether this bill actually limits access to vulnerable groups in Texas and the impact it might have. And obviously, it's going to take a while to parse through all that, but at the moment, unless a court stops this bill from these provisions from being put in place, these measures will be in place for the 2022 primary next year.
Well, this bill is one of several passed during Texas's recent special session. Can you break down for us what other measures were approved?
Sure. So what we saw in the second special session, which just ended last week, is a slew of conservative primaries. Greg Abbott is facing several primary challengers next year, and there's a lot of reason for him to say that he wants to win over these primary voters. And you're seeing a lot of priorities that even just a couple of years ago weren't on the agenda that got passed last week. So, for example, you have a bill that would limit medication abortions after about 7 weeks of pregnancy. You have a bill that would change the bail system in Texas that would make it harder for people who have been arrested to get out of jail. They have to post cash, and so that definitely impacts people who are low income who get arrested, even if they haven't been found guilty of a crime. That affects them. One of the bills that didn't pass this session is a bill that would restrict transgender athletes and what sports teams they could play on. That bill didn't pass. It got caught up in the House by a Democratic lawmaker, but that was one of the priorities that Abbott listed that didn't make it in this special session.
So the Texas legislature is set to call another special session to redraw the state's political maps. When is that slated for, and what else could come from that session potentially? You mentioned that bill that did not make it through, that transgender student-athlete bill. Is that one of them potentially?
Potentially, for sure. I think right now lawmakers are on a break. Abbott said he will call the special session on redistricting sometime in the fall, which is, which is a pretty wide open window. And, some strategists are saying this actually gives lawmakers, GOP lawmakers, a chance to kind of let all the bills that they passed in the regular session and the special session kind of settle in, take stock of what the voters are saying, what people are saying about these bills. Abbott has already talked about passing a bill like they did in Arizona, which would allow partisan election audits, and that's something that he's mentioned. And so for sure, we're set to see another special session this fall that could be very, very contentious like we've seen this summer.
All right, Renuka Rayasam for us. Renuka, always good to have you. Thank you very much.
Thanks for having me.